Mr. Peterson lived in a small, cozy house on a quiet street. He wasn't old, maybe somewhere in the middle of being young and old, but his life felt very regular. He had a good job at the library, where he loved being surrounded by stories. But when he came home each day, the house felt a little too quiet, a little too empty. He wasn't sad, not exactly, just used to things being a certain way. He liked his routine: microwave dinners, the evening news, maybe a book if he was feeling adventurous. Sometimes he wished something exciting would happen, something to shake things up. But mostly, he was content. He liked knowing what to expect. Little did he know, his quiet evening was about to get very, very interesting. It all started with a knock at the door. The hum of the refrigerator was usually the loudest sound in the house after 6 p.m. Mr. Peterson would get home, change into his comfy pants, the ones with the tiny sailboats, and start dinner. Tonight, it was spaghetti. He'd open a jar of sauce, boil some noodles, and maybe add a sprinkle of cheese. It wasn't fancy, but it was easy. After dinner, he'd settle into his armchair with the remote. Channel 7 News, followed by that detective show he liked. Sometimes he'd fall asleep before the show even ended, the blue light of the TV flickering on his face. It was the same every night, and he almost never deviated. Tonight, though, the knock at the door promised a change from his well-worn routine. A break from the ordinary. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't a loud, demanding knock, but a gentle, polite one. Mr. Peterson almost didn't hear it over the hum of the refrigerator and the bubbling spaghetti sauce. He paused the TV with a sigh. Visitors were rare. He glanced at the peephole but saw only a blurry figure. He smoothed down his hair, quickly checked to make sure his sailboat pants weren't too wrinkled, and headed for the door. Who could that be? He wondered, already assuming it was Mrs. Henderson from next door, asking to borrow a cup of sugar again. He took a deep breath and opened the door. His eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't Mrs. Henderson. It was someone much younger. Someone he didn't recognize at all. She was holding a box, a rectangular cardboard box covered in colorful pictures of cookies. Mr. Peterson's mind immediately jumped to one conclusion: a fundraiser. He remembered those days from his own childhood, going door to door, selling candy bars and magazines for school. Ah, he thought, a polite refusal already forming on his lips. He wasn't really a cookie person, and he was trying to watch his weight anyway. He'd give her $1 or $2, tell her good luck, and be back to his spaghetti in no time. It was a simple, predictable solution to an unexpected interruption. He just hoped she wasn't selling those peanut butter ones. He was terribly allergic. He braced himself for the sales pitch. Sarah looked like any other teenager, maybe a little younger. She had bright, curious eyes and a friendly smile. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore a simple t-shirt and jeans. She seemed a little nervous, though. He noticed her hands were fidgeting with the cookie box. Despite her youthful appearance, there was something about her that seemed determined. Like she was on a mission. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. She wasn't just some kid selling cookies. There was something more behind her eyes. He just didn't know what it was yet. He waited for her to speak, his polite refusal still ready, but his curiosity piqued. Sarah took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. Then, she leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but clear. "I'm not here to sell anything." Mr. Peterson blinked. That wasn't the sales pitch he was expecting. What else could she want? Maybe she was lost? Or needed help with something? His mind raced through possibilities, each more unlikely than the last. He lowered his guard a fraction, his polite refusal fading away. This wasn't going to be a simple transaction after all. He was officially puzzled. The cookies, the nervousness, the unexpected statement, it all added up to something he couldn't quite figure out. His quiet evening had taken a very strange turn. A nervous chuckle escaped Mr. Peterson's lips. "Oh. Well, that's good." He wasn't sure what else to say. It was like the script for the evening had been ripped up and thrown out the window. He felt a little foolish for assuming she was selling something. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, trying to regain his composure. So, he continued, a little too brightly, what brings you here then? He hoped he didn't sound too awkward. The situation was definitely making him uncomfortable. He just wanted to understand why this young woman was at his door, holding a box of cookies, but not selling them. It was all very strange. He forced another smile. Sarah's smile faltered slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. Oh, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Then, she took another deep breath and continued. Oh, and I just turned 18. The words hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. It was like a sudden clap of thunder on a sunny day. The nervous laughter died in Mr. Peterson's throat. He felt a chill run down his spine, a cold dread creeping into his heart. The cookie box suddenly seemed a lot less innocent. He stared at Sarah, his mind reeling, trying to understand what she meant, what she was implying. His quiet, predictable evening had just exploded. He knew deep down that his life was about to change forever. Mr. Peterson's face paled. The smile vanished completely, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. He blinked several times, as if trying to wake himself from a bad dream. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He felt a knot forming in his stomach, a sense of impending doom. He couldn't meet Sarah's gaze. He looked down at his sailboat pants, then at the cookie box, then back at Sarah, his eyes darting around nervously. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. The hum of the refrigerator seemed deafening now. He was no longer thinking about spaghetti, or the evening news. He was only thinking about the past, about secrets he had kept buried for years. The past was knocking at his door, and it was holding a box of cookies. A memory flickered in Mr. Peterson's mind, a brief image from a long time ago. A young woman, with bright eyes and a warm smile, just like Sarah. He remembered her from the neighborhood, years ago, when he first moved into the house. They would chat sometimes, about the weather, about books. He hadn't seen her since she moved away, maybe 15, 16 years ago. Her name was Emily. Could Sarah be? No, it couldn't be. It was just a coincidence. But the resemblance was uncanny. The way she tilted her head when she spoke, the sparkle in her eyes, it was all too familiar. He shook his head slightly, trying to clear his thoughts. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not after all this time. Finally, Sarah spoke, breaking the tense silence. I'm looking for information, she said, her voice a little shaky. About my father. Mr. Peterson's heart leaped into his throat. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. Your father? He managed to stammer. Sarah nodded. I never knew him, she explained. My mom, she didn't talk about him much. But now that I'm 18, I want to find out who he was. What he was like. She paused, looking directly at Mr. Peterson. My mom told me she used to live in this neighborhood, a long time ago. She said you were a friend. The cookie box trembled slightly in her hands. She said you might know something. Mr. Peterson felt like he was trapped in a nightmare. He knew far more than he was letting on. He knew Emily, he knew about Sarah, and he knew, well, that was the part he couldn't say. Not yet, maybe not ever. He hesitated, searching for the right words. How could he possibly explain? How could he tell this young woman the truth without shattering everything? He was caught between his conscience and his desire to protect the life he had built. He needed to be careful, very careful. One wrong word could change everything. He licked his dry lips and finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily, yes, I remember Emily. Sarah's eyes lit up, a flicker of hope replacing the nervousness. You do? You knew my mom? She seemed relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She extended the cookie box towards him. Would you like a cookie? She offered, her voice a little brighter. My mom always said her cookies were the best way to make friends. It was a simple gesture, a peace offering, a way to connect. But for Mr. Peterson, it was a test. A test of his honesty, a test of his courage, and a test of his past. He looked at the cookies, then back at Sarah, his mind still racing. What should he do? What could he do? His mind was a battlefield. On one side, his conscience screamed at him to tell Sarah the truth, to give her the answers she deserved. On the other side, fear whispered in his ear, reminding him of everything he could lose, his comfortable life, his reputation, his peace of mind. He knew taking a cookie would be an act of acceptance, an acknowledgement of his connection to Emily and, potentially, to Sarah herself. But refusing would be cruel, a rejection of her vulnerability and her quest for knowledge. He looked from the cookies to Sarah's hopeful face, and the internal battle raged on. He had to make a choice, and the clock was ticking. Please, Sarah said softly, her voice laced with a quiet desperation. It's really important to me. I just want to know who he was. Anything you can tell me would help. Her eyes pleaded with him, reflecting a lifetime of unanswered questions. Mr. Peterson could see the pain in her face, the yearning for a connection to a father she never knew. He realized that his silence wasn't just protecting himself, it was also hurting Sarah. He couldn't erase the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could offer her some small measure of comfort, some sliver of truth. He had to say something. He just had to figure out what. The weight of her plea pressed down on him, forcing him to make a choice. He made his decision. He wouldn't tell her everything, not yet. But he couldn't leave her empty-handed. He would offer her a carefully crafted version of the truth, a story that would provide some answers without revealing the full extent of his involvement. It was a compromise, a way to appease his conscience while still protecting himself. He took a deep breath and reached for the cookie box. All right, Sarah, he said, his voice steadier now. Let's talk about Emily. He carefully selected a chocolate chip cookie, avoiding the peanut butter ones, of course. I knew your mother a long time ago, he began, when she lived just down the street. The story was about to begin. She was a lovely woman, Mr. Peterson continued, carefully choosing his words. Always smiling, always friendly. We used to chat about books, mostly. She loved to read, just like I do. He paused, taking a bite of the cookie. It was surprisingly good. We weren't close friends, exactly, he added, wanting to downplay their relationship. More like friendly neighbors. She moved away pretty suddenly, I remember. Said she was going to start a new life somewhere else. He left out the details of their late-night talks, the shared dreams, and the one unforgettable night that had changed everything. Those were secrets he would keep buried, at least for now. He watched Sarah's face, searching for any sign of suspicion. Sarah listened intently, her eyes fixed on Mr. Peterson's face. She seemed satisfied with his explanation, at least for now. Did she ever talk about him? She asked hesitantly, the question hanging in the air. Mr. Peterson paused, his heart skipping a beat. This was the tricky part. He had to be careful. Not really, he said, trying to sound casual. She was pretty private about her personal life. I didn't know she had a boyfriend, or anything like that. It was a lie, of course. He knew all too well. But he hoped Sarah would believe him. He offered her a weak smile, hoping to reassure her. He just wanted this to be over. Thank you, Sarah said softly, a genuine smile gracing her lips. Even just knowing that you knew her, it helps. It makes her feel more real, somehow. She paused, looking down at the cookie box. I guess I should go. I don't want to take up any more of your time. She seemed genuinely grateful, but Mr. Peterson couldn't shake the feeling that she was still holding back, that she wasn't entirely convinced by his story. He noticed a subtle flicker in her eyes, a hint of doubt that betrayed her outward politeness. Had he given himself away? Was she just being polite? He couldn't be sure. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Sarah offered another polite smile. Thank you again for your time, Mr. Peterson. I really appreciate it. She turned to leave, the cookie box clutched in her hands. Mr. Peterson watched her walk away, his heart heavy with guilt and uncertainty. He closed the door slowly, the click echoing in the sudden silence of his house. He leaned against the door, taking a deep breath. It was over, at least for now. But he knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. He had a feeling that Sarah, and the truth, would be back. And next time, he might not be able to hide. He walked slowly back to the living room, the uneaten cookie still clutched in his hand. The spaghetti was cold, the detective's show forgotten. He sank into his armchair, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. He should have told her the truth. He knew it. He looked around the quiet, empty room, the familiar surroundings now tainted by his deception. He had chosen to protect his comfortable life, but at what cost? He had lied to a young woman searching for her father, a young woman who deserved to know the truth. The regret was a bitter pill to swallow, a constant reminder of his cowardice. He closed his eyes, wishing he could rewind time, wishing he could make a different choice. The memory flooded back, clearer now, more vivid than ever before. It was a summer night, warm and filled with the scent of honeysuckle. He and Emily were sitting on her porch, talking for hours, sharing secrets and dreams. They were young, carefree, and deeply in love. He remembered the way she looked at him, her eyes sparkling with affection. He remembered the stolen kisses, the whispered promises. And he remembered the night they made a mistake, a beautiful mistake that had changed their lives forever. He hadn't seen Emily since she left, but he had never forgotten her. And now, after all these years, their secret was standing on his doorstep, holding a box of cookies. He was Sarah's father. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He couldn't keep running from the truth. He couldn't let Sarah go on searching for a father she already knew, a father who had been living a lie for 18 years. He had to do something, anything, to make things right. He stood up, his legs shaky. He didn't know what to say, how to explain, but he knew he had to try. He couldn't let fear control him any longer. He had to face his past, and he had to face Sarah. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He was about to change his life, and possibly hers, forever. The first step was admitting the truth. But how? Before he could even formulate a plan, before he could even take another step, there was another knock at the door. Not gentle this time, but firm, almost insistent. Mr. Peterson froze, his heart pounding in his chest. It was Sarah. He knew it. He hesitated for a moment, his hand trembling as he reached for the doorknob. Was he ready for this? Was he ready to face the truth? He took a deep breath and opened the door. Sarah was standing there, her expression serious, her eyes fixed on his. But this time, she wasn't holding a box of cookies. She was holding a photograph. His stomach dropped. This was it. Sarah held out the photograph, her hand steady. It was an old picture, faded and creased, but the faces were clear. Mr. Peterson recognized it instantly. It was him, younger, with longer hair, standing next to Emily. They were smiling, their arms around each other. It was taken at a local park, during a summer picnic. A picnic he had completely forgotten about, until now. He stared at the picture, his mind racing. Where had she gotten this? How much did she know? He looked up at Sarah, his eyes filled with fear and resignation. The game was up. The truth was about to be revealed. He braced himself for the storm. There was no escaping it now. The past had finally caught up with him. You knew all along, didn't you? Sarah said, her voice surprisingly calm. You knew who my mother was, and you knew who I was. You lied to me. It wasn't an accusation, but a statement of fact. A confirmation of her suspicions. Mr. Peterson couldn't deny it. The truth was etched on his face, plain for her to see. He hung his head in shame, unable to meet her gaze. Yes, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I knew. The confession hung in the air, heavy with regret and years of unspoken secrets. He waited for her anger, her disappointment, her rejection. But it never came. Tears welled up in Mr. Peterson's eyes. I was young, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. And I've regretted it every day since. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes pleading for understanding. Please, he begged. Can you ever forgive me? He had spent so many years running from his past, and now, it was finally catching up to him. He knew he didn't deserve her forgiveness, but he hoped, with all his heart, that she could find it in her heart to give it to him. He was ready to face the consequences of his actions, whatever they may be. He was finally ready to be a father. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, a small smile touched her lips. It's okay, she said softly. I understand. Mr. Peterson was stunned. You do? He stammered, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. Sarah nodded. My mom told me everything, she explained. About you, about what happened. She always said you were a good person, but that you were scared. I wanted to see for myself. She paused, her eyes searching his. I wanted to see if you were still scared. She offered him a gentle smile. I think you're not scared anymore. A tentative smile spread across Mr. Peterson's face, a glimmer of hope replacing the years of regret. Does this mean? He began, his voice thick with emotion. Sarah nodded, her eyes shining with tears. It means we can start over, she said. It means I finally have a father. She stepped forward and hugged him tightly, a hug that conveyed forgiveness, acceptance, and a shared longing for connection. Mr. Peterson hugged her back, tears streaming down his face. He had been given a second chance, a chance to be the father he should have been all along. It was a new beginning for both of them. The quiet, predictable life he once knew was gone, replaced by something far more meaningful. It wouldn't be easy. They both knew that. There were years of lost time to make up for, years of secrets to unpack, and a lot of healing to do. But they were willing to try. They were willing to navigate the complexities of their situation, one step at a time. Mr. Peterson knew he had a lot to learn about being a father, but he was eager to start. He imagined taking Sarah to the library, sharing his love of books with her, just like he had with her mother so long ago. He imagined celebrating her birthday, meeting her friends, and being there for her, no matter what. He had a lot of catching up to do, but he was ready for the challenge. He was finally ready to be a family. The next day, Mr. Peterson did something he hadn't done in years. He called in sick to work. He spent the day cleaning the house, getting rid of the microwave dinners, and making a real spaghetti dinner, from scratch. He even bought a small cake, with candles. When Sarah arrived that evening, she found a different Mr. Peterson waiting for her. A Mr. Peterson who was smiling, who was excited, who was finally ready to be a dad. They ate spaghetti, they laughed, they blew out the candles on the cake. And for the first time in a long time, Mr. Peterson's house didn't feel so quiet, so empty. It felt like home. It all started with a knock and a box of cookies, and it ended with a family.